In this movie, I'll show you how to create a beveled ornament, specifically these two stars on either side of the logo. And I'll also show you how you can quickly and easily recolor your artwork, even when it contains multiple fills and strokes and dynamic effects. I'll go ahead and switch over to my document in progress, and then I'll select the two stars by clicking on one and shift-clicking on the other with the black arrow tool. And I'll control spacebar drag, that's a command spacebar drag around the right-hand star in order to zoom in on it. And so the first thing we want to do is switch over to the Appearance panel and go ahead and click on the existing black fill to select it. And then click the Add New Fill icon in the bottom left corner of the panel, or you can press Control/ or Command/ on the Mac and change that new fill to white. Then go up to the Effect menu, choose Distort and Transform, and choose Transform, or if you loaded D keys, you've got that shortcut of Control E or Command E on the Mac. I'm going to go ahead and dial in horizontal and vertical scale values of 80% and turn on the preview checkbox. Now, if you look closely, you'll notice that even though the center reference point is selected inside this little matrix here, that the white star is not exactly centered inside of the black star. And that's because Illustrator is measuring the center according to the bounding box of each selected path outline, by the way. If these two paths were grouped together, this effect would not work. So they have to be independent path outlines. Now, our problem is that the center of the reference point for a star doesn't match the star's actual center. And so if you wanted to scoot this guy down, you would have to change the vertical move value here. And I found that a value of 0.25 points ends up working out beautifully. Now, in our case, we don't need the two stars to be centered. So I'm going to reset that vertical value to 0. I just want you to know that that's the case when you're working with stars and other shapes whose centers don't match the center of the bounding box. Anyway, after scaling the object, I'll go ahead and click OK. And now I want to round off the corners of this new star. So I'll go up to the Effect menu, choose Stylize, and then choose the Round Corners command. And I found that a radius value of 1 point ended up working quite nicely because these stars are so small after all. And then I'll turn on the preview checkbox and I can see that I've blown it here. I've rounded both shapes, including the black fill. And that's because the stroke wasn't active when I chose the command. Not that big a deal because I can click OK in order to apply round corners to the path, and then I can grab the round corner effect and drag it and drop it onto the white fill in order to correct the problem. Then click on the white fill to make it active, drop down to the page icon at the bottom of the panel and click on it. And this time let's change the new fill to black so it covers up the old one. And I'm also going to adjust my transform settings. So I'll click on the word transform there, and I found that horizontal and vertical move values of 1.3 points ended up working out nicely. I'll turn on the preview checkbox. You can see that that scoots the black star outside of the shape, which is okay because we're going to cover up that region right there with the stroke. The thing that isn't okay is we've got a little bit of rounding showing up over here on the far left-hand side. So I'm going to increase the scale values to 85% apiece. And again, I just figured these out through trial and error. If you were working on different kinds of shapes, you would presumably have to come up with different values. The same goes if these were larger or smaller shapes. And then I'll click OK in order to apply the effect. All right, now click on the stroke up here at the top and change the color to black and then change the weight to 2 points. And then finally, you want to click on the word stroke and change the corner to a round join in order to produce this effect. Now, the problem is it's at the top of the stack. It should really be below the fills. So I'm going to go ahead and twirl all my fills closed and then drag this new stroke to the bottom of the stack like so. And notice it does a great job of covering up that black fill. But if for some reason you could still see the edge of that fill, you would just click on the word transform for this top fill right here. And you would turn on the preview checkbox so you can see what you're doing. And then you would adjust those move settings. Anyway, ours are fine, so I'll just cancel out. And then I'll click on the bottom stroke to select it, and I'll click on Add New Stroke to create a new one, and it'll go ahead and keep all those settings. We want to select the original stroke now, the one at the bottom of the stack, and change its line weight to 3 points. And then I'll once again apply the transform effect by going up to the Effect menu, choosing Distort and Transform, and choosing Transform. And again, through trial and error, I ended up changing the horizontal value to 2 and the vertical value to 1. You can turn on the preview checkbox if you want. You'll see that you get a kind of shadow effect. So I'll go ahead and click OK. Now, I want to create an edge, a white edge, to distinguish the black stroke of the star from the black stroke of its shadow. So with the new stroke selected, I'll go ahead and click on the Add New Stroke icon. That way I keep the stroke settings, but I don't duplicate the dynamic effect. And I'll change the color to white for the new stroke, and I'll change its line weight to 4 points, like so. And we end up with this beveled star. Problem is, this isn't the color scheme I'm interested in. I want the stars to be red throughout, which could mean changing the color of 2 fills and 2 strokes here inside the appearance panel. But there's an easier way to work, which is to go up to the Recolor Artwork icon up here in the control panel and click on it, and then click on that little dialog box icon in order to bring up the Color Reduction Options dialog box and turn off the black checkbox so we're not preserving blacks. That way we can change the color of our blacks. Then click OK. And now make sure that your color values are set to CMYK. And then go ahead and dial in a magenta value of 100, a yellow value of 100, and a black value of 0. And that ends up recoloring everything about the stars, both strokes and both fills in one easy operation. And then click OK in order to make the change. And that's how you create a beveled ornament. Now, when you view the effect this close up, these highlights don't really necessarily look like highlights associated with the star. I'll click off the shapes to get rid of the selection outlines. But as soon as you zoom out by pressing Control-0 or Command-0 on a Mac, and then in my case, zoom back in so I can see the artwork up close, they end up looking great. So it's an effect that resolves itself quite nicely for small objects. And that's how you create beveled ornaments using a combination of the transform and round corner effects.